Welcome to the Dreadful Dialogue. I'm your host, Alyse, and of course, this is your horror podcast. Today, I have with me a guest that is my niece. Her name is Gray, and we are going to be chatting about the movie Five Nights at Freddy's. And I brought on my niece because she really knows her stuff when it comes to not just the movie, but the video game. When I first heard of the video game, I think I was teaching middle school at the time, and I remember seeing kids wearing the sweatshirts and had the stickers and all the different merch, and I would ask them questions, and I always thought it seemed like something really cool. But when I watched the movie, I didn't know anything about the game. So if I want to do a comparison, I'm not the person for that. I do not know the game, but Gray knows all about it. So let's introduce Gray to the podcast. How you doing, Gray? Come on in, say something.
I am doing very well. I'm very excited to be here, and especially because of the subject of discussion. The subject of discussion being one of my most favorite franchises since I have been a kid. The games came out, I want to say, when I was about 10.
Oh, wow.
When the first one came out, and I had just grown attached to it. I want to say maybe about the second game, and since then I just kept a love for it and horror. So I'm very happy to be here.
Cool. Yeah. My niece is definitely a spooky kid. Right from the beginning, she started pretty early, so I think that's cool. Her and her siblings, my other niece and nephew.
Yeah, it was always fun being able to bond over horror movies with someone, especially so close to me. With how close our family can be, it's always nice being able to see that I'm not the only horror fanatic.
For real, yeah. So before we get into some questions about the movie, I want to ask a couple of background questions. We know you're a horror fan as well.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever go to Chuck E. Cheese growing up? I don't know if that was still popular when you were young.
It was here and there because it was still kind of cutting new tech, but not new tech. But personally, I wouldn't be caught dead around it because I was afraid of the animatronics.
Oh, see, and that's exactly what I was going to ask you because I was totally scared of those as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought they were like these creepy things on the stage. And then I don't know when they ended up stop using them, but you still had like Chuck E. Cheese himself would walk around. He didn't scare me so much, but those animatronics were pretty creepy as a kid.
Especially like with how little sometimes they can be maintenance. You can always see like how much age they can get. You can always see like the decaying, and there's just something about it that can be unsettling. Whether it's an abandoned building or a fully functional pizzeria, sometimes those animatronics can just be unnerving.
Yeah, a lot like how puppets or old dolls,
yes.
Right? They kind of are ventriloquist. They give you the same like eerie vibe.
Yeah, because they're always staring at you.
Yeah. Okay, so since you've seen the movies, obviously, how well do you think the movie followed the video game?
The video game, well, itself, of course, people will say at first, oh, it's just a horror game based on nothing compared to, like other classics like Psycho, Nightmare on Elm. People, wouldn't really say that sometimes robots aren't scary. But this is more than just ghost children taking over and inhibiting the robots. It is about a man, William Afton, who loses his mind and his family, along with so many others who lost their lives because of this man.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. See, when I watched the movie, William Afton is the guy played by, Scream King Matthew Lillard.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything more you have to say about that? Because I didn't know that. I just thought he was just a little character in...
And
of course, the end you figure out he's a little more, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know the background. Do you have more to share on that?
Yeah, truly, William Afton would say that. Of course, for one, he was a genius. He was always having this dream of trying to entertain people, and from the graphic novels to the video games, the lore would always just find ways to just make us despise or otherwise just be against William Afton, because, well, for one, while he may have been a robotics mechanic along with his partner Henry Emily,
A new character to me. I don't think that character wasn't in the movie, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Small thing. Henry Emily is another robotics. He and William Afton actually were partners for a while, but I'm not sure why or how they're gonna plan on bringing in Henry Emily. Mm-hmm. Especially now with the new movie gonna come out around next year, around Christmas time.
Yeah.
So with that, you have no idea. People don't really know that much about William Afton, as you've said. And because of that, you just have no idea on what exactly who he is or what he's trying to do. You just know that, oh, he murdered these children, but you just don't know when, you don't know where, you don't know how.
Got you. Mm-hmm. Now, when you played the game, you said you were, I don't recall how old you said you were when you watched it.
I was young, yeah, but I want to say that when I first played the game, I was around 12 because the first game was, the first 4 games are of the same concept, to survive till 6 a.m., which is a theme that they kept in the movie as well.
Yeah, definitely with Mike, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the security guard.
Yeah, of course. But of course, in the movie, Mike is trying to, of course, just be a lowly security guard trying to make a buck. But in the actual lore, he is trying to find his real father, because in the lore of the Five Nights at Freddy's game, actually, Michael and William are son and father. People do not know that.
So, because in the movie, it's the police officer. She's his daughter. And
yep.
We get that. Of course, we've just blown this all out of the water. Just know, listeners, tons of spoilers for the movie. Mm-hmm. I don't know why you're listening to a horror podcast about a movie if you don't realize that. But hey, I don't want to upset nobody. There is spoilers. Now, when you used to play the game, were you ever scared to play the game? Because I remember playing Resident Evil when it first came out with my cousin Casey, and I was about the same age. I was in middle school when that game came out, and we would play it in the dark, and it had this eerie music, and the zombie, the graphics at that time were so not ahead of their time, but they were better than what I had growing up. So they were actually kind of scary, and you'd hear these loud noises and dogs, and we'd be jumping and playing it, yet we still played it. Did the game actually scare you, and did you eventually get over that fear, or did you just continue to enjoy the fear?
Well, it's a bit of both, really. Of course, first playing, you're going to be, of course you're going to be on edge, and the graphics in the games, they can, some people will say that it's a bit outdated, but you know what? I think it holds out, especially because of the nostalgia that it can give old fans like me. And all you're doing really is just sitting in one room, checking cameras, checking doors. It's a really simple concept, but it was easy to get scared because of how frantic the animatronics would move. No matter where they would go, they would either be in the shadows, they would be behind doors. They could always be hiding. And there was always little ticks to make sure that you would always close the doors on time, or make sure that you have the mask on and off, or ensuring that the right audio will play so that way you can distract the other animatronics. Now, as I've grown, of course, the love has only grown further and further, because now I just enjoy the thrill of being scared by them.
Yeah, that's why we're fans of the genre.
Yep.
We're still chasing that, I say scared or terrifying of that feeling, but it's a way to deal with it in the moment, and then you just get over it, and then maybe it gets you later at night. That's always my favorite. When you wake up in the middle of the night, you're like, oh, I'm a little creeped out. I'm not creeped out enough to go turn my lights on, and not like when I was a kid, I go, Mom and Dad, I'm gonna go sleep by you guys. But it's a cool feeling, right?
Yeah, I will say though that the most fear-warranted game though would be the 4th game, when you're actually taking place in a house instead of an office. And in that house, of course, you're seeing the same animatronics going through the hallways. You're hearing stuff in the kitchen. And when that game came out, I was terrified. The animatronics looked so much more nightmarish, no pun intended to fans. And of course, I would always get paranoid, are there animatronics in my house? Are they going to come and steal me away into my closet? Are they going to drag me under my bed? But of course, again, it just faltered and continued as the franchise went on, especially as things progressed.
Yeah. So the pizzeria is kind of the main location.
It's the main location, yes, because William Afton and Henry Emily, of course, had to work together in order to create this fun entertainment place where magic and stuff can come to life, so that way kids can be entertained at their parties.
And did they do a good job in the film using that location, do you think?
I think they did, because because a lot of the layout was how it intended to be in the game, especially with the way the cameras were laid out in the security room, to the doors, even to turning off the power that first flick, there's always just little things that you can catch, especially from the game to the movie.
Yeah, and I really when I first watched the film, I was kind of like, eh. I mean, I didn't think it was terrible, but I don't think I fully appreciated it. And then when I did a second watch, I really caught on to more things. And then doing just a little bit of research, again, I don't have the advanced knowledge you have of the game. I really feel like this film was made for the fans, and it wasn't necessarily made for somebody who's never played the games.
Absolutely, because there's always little things that fans like me will always catch from the puppets' very last song at the end to the first song that played, where everyone was just banging their heads. At the premiere, I remember just being surrounded by so many other fans too. I remember I was feeling like I was in my element, and there was just so many times where even the audience were able to get a laugh, throw a joke in, like, hey, was that the bite of 87?
What does that mean? Okay, so in case our listeners don't know.
Yeah, that one it's a common reference to a YouTuber named Markiplier. It's just a little joke because it's common for people to assume that the bite of 87 and the bite of 83 are the same and different, but that's a whole nother can of worms that I'm afraid that
we need a whole nother podcast episode
I'm afraid so.
Got you. Yeah, I also liked with the movie that, sometimes some people don't like, like PG-13 type movies. I wanted more kills. I think it was like 45 minutes into the movie before there was a kill. But then again, I had to remind myself, like, Alyse, when this film first came out, remember, it was nothing but like middle schooler kids. And there's still probably youngsters that like the game, or people like you that you were young when you got into it and now you're older. So I think that they needed to do that. The kills weren't super graphic.
No.
And I think it's a good gateway horror movie for somebody.
Definitely.
Yeah, like if you're not into, like, it wasn't gory, it wasn't a slasher, there wasn't gratuitous, there was obviously no nudity or any of those tropes.
No.
There was, no alcoholism, there's no frat boys and party animal type people. So I think I've heard people say that about this movie, that they wanted it to be a little more deeper, but now that I've thought about it and I've learned a little bit more about the background and I thought about the original target audience, I think it was good that they did that. We need movies like that for people who are going to, to pull some people into our geeky fandom of the horror movies. You got to start out with something simple before you take them straight to, like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So you don't go into that one for your first
movie. Of course, especially for those companies that are going to be reviving older fandoms and older fans and such. They're gonna need just like a little bit of a push between both, so that way they can have that silver lining of being able to have both new fans and old fans.
Yeah, and it might even work that some people might start to play the game now, after watching it and after doing a little bit more research. So let's talk about some of the characters. So Mike, the security guard in the film, he was kind of isolated, and he was dealing with a lot of paranoia. I think, of course, from dealing with, what happened with his brother, and then being at this place at night, and the guy had the career counselor kind of warned him that the place was, odd.
It was all sketchy. Yeah, of course, one would be paranoid, and of course, I think that the way that the film portrayed it too was exceptionally well, especially with like how he feels about trying to protect his sister too, all along the lines of while his aunt is trying to gain custody, and it's just a whole other point of isolation where he just doesn't want to be alone and he doesn't want her to be alone.
Yeah, and does the game feel that way when you're playing it? Even though there's not the exact same backstory, does it feel isolating?
Yes, it actually does, because no matter what, you are on your own against those animatronics. It doesn't matter what you have to do. It doesn't matter possibly where you even go. Those animatronics are down to get you. They are, because they believe that you are the big bad. So no matter what, it really is just you on your own with those animatronics.
Yeah, and I thought you made a really good point. You brought in the aunt, and how the aunt wants to, she wants to have custody of his sister Abby, and she wants to have custody of him for all the wrong reasons. And it takes it back to Afton again, because I mean, he's not really keeping these kids, these ghost kids in their bodies and these things for the right reasons. They don't even know they're being manipulated.
No, they don't.
Yeah, right. The sheriff or the cop, she tells us like he has influence on them, and it's all these like other background like relationship things going on. I don't even know the right words I'm looking for.
Yeah, I know. It's just so much to unpack and just so much lore like delving into it that there's so many little details that you can't help but to bring up, because every little detail in the lore and the movie are incredibly important, because there's always something that's signifying. It doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter who it is, or even what it is. There is something. It doesn't matter what it is, there's something there.
Got you. So the game, does it have all the same characters, like Foxy and Chica?
Oh yes.
Bunny, Freddy Fazbear, and then are they actually inhabited by kids in the same manner? Because that's kind of terrifying. And again, that was something that I thinking back to my thought earlier with like keeping it PG-13. I'm like, to me, they did a good job of visually explaining that without going too visually like creepy for kids, because that is a terrifying thought that could happen to a kid. Like if I was a kid and I was old enough to understand, I would be kind of scared. Like, so is like this guy some creeper gonna grab me and do this to me? Yeah,
essentially what Apton would do was he would take the very first suit that he would created, the very first suit, a Springlock Bonnie golden suit. Okay. That same golden suit that he would use to lure children away during their birthdays into a back room where he would take their lives. To which, well, he had to think, what was he going to do with the bodies? He can't take them outside. He can't just leave them inside. So he saw the animatronics, and what he did was put their corpses into, and what would happen was the corpses actually mended to the endoskeletons of those animatronics. That's how they were able to mend and combine into it.
Wow. See, the movie just kind of gives you a quick... They don't give you an explanation. It's just a brief thing. Like, they're in there. First we figure out really quick that it's their ghost, but then we eventually figure out it is actually their bodies, but we don't get as in depth of an explanation. So thank you for that.
Of course. It is grotesquely optimistic.
So do those characters actually exist?
Yes, actually, yeah. All the same ones: Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and
Cupcake. Right.
Yeah, and the cupcake, actually, because William actually had... The very first victim was Chica.
Okay.
As well as her real name, the child's name, was named Susie.
Okay.
Susie carried a dog.
Uh-huh.
William actually murders her dog, too.
The dog.
Yeah, which is why the cupcake is so bitey.
That makes sense, because it would use its teeth all the time.
Yeah, a lot of people like to assume that it was just like a Chihuahua dog or a little dog just because of how rowdy it is.
Yeah, maybe that makes sense. They are kind of...
But and of course, there is the essential Golden Freddy. But Golden Freddy is, of course, as you can tell, was different. Golden Freddy is essentially taken over by not one, but essentially two spirits. And as we have seen, there is the blonde boy who the fandom mostly names as Cassidy, the most resentful spirit out of all of the animatronics, because on that victim, William actually went too far and had mangled their body so much more than the other kids that they were the most resentful when it came to getting revenge on William, and when it came to trying to get him to, leave kids alone. But, of course, the lore on that and on the movie are different, because the reason in the movie that Cassidy wanted to, usually Cassidy would want to, have Apton be killed or want him to just, repent for what he did. But Cassidy in the movie was actually the one who was luring Abby.
Yeah, he was the one that was that told Mike, and they got into his dreams, and he's like, yeah, we'll help you find the guy who killed your little brother, but we want Abby. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, we find out the reason being is so that way they can turn Abby into one of the animatronics, believably to be one of two animatronics, whether it's Circus Baby from Sister Location, one of the games, or an old unfinished project from one of the graphic novels. It's not confirmed yet.
Was Circus Baby one of the animatronics that was sitting around? I thought I saw one that looked like a doll.
That was the doll.
Okay.
But Circus Baby is a part of one of the later games, and it's not part of the original 4.
So maybe it'll turn up in the sequel.
It's a possibility.
Or a sequel if they turn this into a franchise of some sort.
I imagine so, because of course Circus Baby has her own story too, but I'm afraid again that's going to be a whole nother can of worms that includes William Afton.
Okay, so if they we'll definitely bring you back for when the sequel comes out or any other parts of this franchise.
Yeah.
Did you like the song "Talking in Your Sleep" by the Romantics?
Oh,
being used in the movie. I mean, because I know it wasn't in the video games, right?
Yeah, no. Sadly, the song wasn't in the games, but I think for the era that the pizzeria would have been in the movie and the way that it was structured, and even the lyrics too, it all just fit in correctly to the situation and into the movie itself.
Yeah, I thought they did good. I mean, I thought of the song like someone, but I think it's Sam Rockwell. I always feel like somebody's watching me.
Oh, yeah.
You guys didn't know I sing on this podcast. No, I'm a terrible singer. That would have been like a really good song, but then I was like, that was too obvious in that movie. Mm-hmm. That song's been used in so many things.
True.
So I thought Talking in Your Sleep was a good one for that. So since there is so much lore, I kind of feel like as we're talking about this is that we're having the same concept that happens when somebody reads a book versus the movie. Most of the time the books are I can't even think of a movie where the movie's better than the book. I could think of a close where it's not better, but they did a good job. Like Interview with the Vampire, I think did a good job. There's just not time. And then again, keeping in mind the target audience. Do you think that as somebody who doesn't know about the lore, that they still did a good job with the movie?
I think so, because though that the lore wasn't completely fleshed out or, of course, exactly the same way as majority of the fandom thought, it was still like enough to where it was still able to be recognized and where it wasn't completely left out. Mm-hmm. Though there were some key points that were missing, such as Henry Emily, Afton's real family, and just other little things that maybe could have fit into the movie. Mm-hmm. But I'm still happy with the result, because no matter what, I was still entertained. No matter what, it was still Five Nights at Freddy's. Uh-huh. And it was the right Five Nights at Freddy's and not like a banana split situation.
A banana split situation? Okay, what does that mean? Where you just like put a bunch of random ingredients together?
No.
That's what I thought. I love banana splits, y'all.
No, banana splits I'm referring to. It was essentially supposed to be like a knockoff Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm not exactly sure when Banana Splits came out, but it of course involved moving animatronics and involved they're defying their master and killing just a whole bunch of...
It's a video game?
No, this one actually... Well, it was inspired by Five Nights at Freddy's. Okay. So essentially it was... But it just took its own turn and went away from Freddy.
But what was it? Was it a movie, a short on YouTube?
It's a movie. Okay. It's a legitimate horror movie.
Oh, yeah. I think, it's coming to me. And then there's also the other one, which I haven't even watched. I probably didn't even speak on it. The Nicolas Cage one. It's on my list. Willy's Wonderland. I've never watched it. I've just seen the little picture, the thumbnail. I'm like, is that kind of like a Five Nights at Freddy's knockoff for adults? I don't know. So, okay, I get what you're saying, though. So, Banana Split was another one that was inspired, but they didn't deviate so much.
Yeah.
So, that's good to hear, because like I said, once I delved just a little into the lore and a little bit into the background, I did appreciate it. I liked that they made it for the fans, and I'm glad to hear that as somebody who was a hardcore fan of it, that you were satisfied with it. You appreciated the concept and what they did.
I especially appreciate how much of it they had to keep, too. With so much of it being like not just practical too, but because so many of them were just so on board in Blumhouse, just ready to make it. There were yes, of course there were original animatronics, but there were also, there were people in suits. There were so many people behind the music, and it's just, there is something always to appreciate, I
practical
believe.
effects. Yeah, I think it was like Jim Henson's, one of his studios. I know he has several. Creature Studios, maybe, that did all of that. So I really like that because I mean, that's taking it back to my days too. Again, the the OG Muppets and Sesame Street, the Muppets, all that that the stuff he's done. I love Muppets Take Manhattan. Just a side note. So it was really cool. I didn't know that either when I found out later that there were that it wasn't just animatronics, that there were actually people in these big old life-size suits.
Yeah, fun fact, actually, the only one that was pure animatronic was actually Foxy. He was the only one that was just pure animatronic, no person in a suit. The other other four were, but Foxy was full animatronic.
Wow. See, and now you said that totally makes sense because he's got all these, like, his neck is kind of exposed and he has like an injury. Do you know anything on that, by the way? I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't. I the first time I saw him, I'm like, oh man, poor thing. Like, I wonder what happened to Fox. Wonder what happened to this Foxy guy.
Yeah,
guy, girl. I don't even know if it's a guy or a girl. See,
technically, Foxy was always just the one that was kind of left behind. As you notice, he has his own stage that's by the side. He's not really with the main three.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So he's left more exposed that way because they always say that they're still like developing Foxy, or he's always under repairs. So that's why he's the one that's always tattered and scratched, and he has the extra.
His eye is messed up or something too, right?
Yeah, he's the one with the missing eye, but. Essentially, sometimes that's what makes him all the more terrifying.
Yeah. Like, I didn't even know, speaking of the animatronics, I didn't even realize that there were two Freddys. I thought it was just, they were all Freddy Fazbear. And again, doing a little research, I was like, oh, so there's this golden Freddy and there's this regular Freddy. Nonetheless, I still enjoyed the movie. You just assumed, oh, Freddy's doing Freddy stuff. Yeah. But it makes sense now that you've given us a little background that golden Freddy was the more darker, and I don't mean like, literally, I mean in the sense of like his being, his personality, that he was the darker character because he's the one that goes and tries to grab Abby and puts her in the gets her to go in the car.
Yeah, even so, no matter what, they also kept that small element of Golden Freddy, making sure that they were the ones to be the one that are different, the one that is just the most angry, the most being able to like jump out at the opportunity to be like, hey, we're gonna do this. Because this will make Afton pay.
Yeah. I also feel like, and I don't know if I was just reading into it, at times, I rooted for the animatronics wanting Abby. Not that I wanted Abby to get taken. I not rooted for them. Maybe rooted is not the word. I empathized with them wanting her. I didn't think it had anything to do with Afton. Maybe from what you're telling me it does, but I kind of saw it as like they wanted another friend, and that's kind of what kids usually want. Like, was that part of it in the lore? Was it both? Was it you said it was just getting back at Afton? Did it have anything to do with the genuinely liking Abby?
Essentially, from my own understanding, I do agree with you. Yes, they're just kids. They're kids in animatronics who want a new friend, who want to be able to play with this new friend, and they want to keep her. And yeah, essentially, maybe they'll want to try and make her become an animatronic, but that is where the game and the movie differ. The movie itself is trying to get other kids to become the animatronics so that way they can join them, and so that way they won't be alone anymore. But in the movie, in the game, of course, all the animatronics believe that other humans are Afton, or they believe that humans are awful and that adults need to be murderized, which is why they have no security guards, which is why there's barely anyone over there, and essentially why Michael goes over and tries to find his father in the games.
Got you. Okay, so were there any like Easter eggs in the film that you can speak on that somebody again who doesn't know anything about the game that are there?
Well, for one, we can begin with, of course, majority of the children's drawings and the newspaper clippings that were always seen, like from the walls of the pizzeria to both the games and the movie. Of course, the animatronics themselves, the layout of the restaurant, but even down to the references of MatPat and Corey Plays, a bunch of YouTubers that made the foundation of the game fandom. Basically the ones who were helping us grow up with the game.
Okay, so who were those two? You just named two YouTubers?
Yeah, YouTubers. MatPat and Corey Plays, along with so many others that I can't even think off the top of my head. but
they had like cameos or
yep,
references.
Yeah,
okay.
like the cameo for Corey was the taxi driver, the one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and of course, Mr. Matt Pat was the waitress.
The waiter, right? Yeah,
Ness.
In the at the diner when the aunt and like the lawyer and the Max, the babysitter and her brother.
Yeah. And especially when he says the line, "It's just a theory," the whole theater goes insane.
Oh, is that something that one of these YouTubers would normally say?
Yeah, okay. You could say it's his catchphrase, really.
Do you think that the movie ending gave potential for a sequel?
Oh, most definitely, especially with...
I mean, we know we're getting a sequel, but at the time we didn't know. I should have reworded that. At the time we didn't know. Clearly we know now.
Yeah, but essentially, of course, a lot of fans speculated because at the very end of the credits, there is a certain song that will only be heard at the second game, which is the puppet's music box. And essentially, that was just the biggest Easter egg that us fans got that was saying, like, oh, we're probably going to get a second game.
Yeah. Because
the marionette plays one of the biggest parts in the second game. But I guess we'll essentially just have to see how they use them in the movie.
Yeah. I know, when I watch it at the end, I go, I again, not even knowing any of the background, I kind of figured, I think they can do a sequel even with Afton, because even if Afton was killed, and we don't know for sure he's killed, he's like groaning, and then one of the Freddys closes the door on him, but it's like, even if he dies, he can end up just like the kids, whether he's just a ghost himself or his actual body's in there. So I'm definitely curious about how they're going to handle that. That's about the only theory I really have in terms of a sequel.
The one thing I will say though, like, to help you on that, William Afton most certainly will likely survive. Because in the games, he is just impossible to kill. Man, I am serious when I say the man gets spring-locked into 3 fires. He takes beatings all around from animatronics, but out of pure iron will, he just refuses to die.
Wow.
It's immaculate. At some point, the fans were just like, okay, at what point are we just gonna just toss him into the fire again?
Yeah.
It's always something with Afton, especially when it comes to just... He always comes back.
so he's the big bad in the video games.
Yep. Okay. He is always...
Because they didn't do that till the end of the movie, let you know that he was the head guy, kind of running the show. So I think that's all the questions. Is there anything else you think fans need to know, whether it's about the movie or the game, that
one thing
I didn't ask you? You want to share?
Actually, one thing I feel that I should mention though is the fact that again, just Henry Emily, he is the partner of William Afton, and not even like getting the tiniest of reference to him, I want to say is just like one of the biggest things that the movie was missing.
That it lacked, yeah.
Yeah, and again, pieces of the lore scattered everywhere, and all of it just being a giant theory is just one of the biggest things that the fandom has writing. And with Henry Emily now being confirmed to be in the second game.
In the second movie.
In the second movie, yeah. It's just further saying like, oh, we're probably gonna get like, oh, maybe we're gonna get the third house fire, or maybe we're gonna get him into a fully spring-lock suit, or maybe even get to see the original Golden Freddy.
Okay.
Of which Henry Emily and William Afton worked together on until they split apart.
Okay. So, question you just brought on, because you said in the video game, in the lore, that Mike, who again is playing the
main character.
Mike Guard, the main character, he's the son. What is he do in the game?
Is in the games, you are Michael.
So he's still the security guard.
Essentially, in all majority of the games, you are Mike
trying to survive.
Trying to survive till 6 a.m. But you are also trying to find clues to where William Afton is. Now, in the game, William Afton is actually, he did get spring locked, and he did get locked away into like that back room and sealed off for about 30 years. In that 30 years, that's when the games are taking place.
Got you.
When you're being Mike and you're trying to learn where he is. And that's when in the third game, that's when you find him. And it wasn't until like after the third game that we started getting more and more pieces of the lore from Scott Cawthon. And when we really started to piece things together into just one big giant timeline and theory that it's just a theory.
And who you just mentioned the person that I didn't recognize. Who was that? You said Scott
Cawthon. That is
okay.
Yeah, he is the creator of the games.
Oh, yeah. I heard a little bit about him that like he made like these wholesome, I think Christian maybe video games.
I want to say that he made
originally?
he made small like little indie games like first, and then like that's when he branched out into like, hey, Five Nights at Freddy's, we can just, see how this goes. And I'm not really sure exactly how he had structured it. I wasn't sure on how, when he plans it out, but we as the fandom kept seeing, like little pieces, little things, and just like, started piecing things together to where we were able to just gain one giant timeline. And then even when we did like try and ask and be like, hey, is this true or is this just a theory? We could never get an outright answer until we were able to at least learn that 3 were canon.
Got you. And there's how many games total?
They want to say there's at least 7, including DLCs. Okay. Maybe 9. But
what are DLCs? Again, non-gamer right here, guys.
DLCs are essentially like little chapters between each game. I forget the acronym off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But essentially they're just like little chapters to just get from one to another, or just, little indie games between.
Got you. So almost like downloadable content, I think, according to the Googles. Mm-hmm. Almost like in books where there's like novellas or little in between things.
Yes.
Okay. Well, great. It's really been cool having you on the podcast and chatting. I've learned a lot. Definitely want to have you back as the sequel when the sequel comes out, and if it turns into a franchise. Mm-hmm.
And I am very happy to just again be here and being able to talk about one of my favorite franchises. It was really, really fun to get to delve into it.
Yeah, I mean it's not only fun to talk about it, but feeling lucky having my niece here. Do you have social media you want to share, or if you don't have to? It's up to you.
I'll just plug in my Instagram at Gray_hoodwitch. I may not post on there a lot, but you know what? I'm always active. It's better than nothing.
Gotcha. All right. Well, again, we appreciate having you on. I hope you guys enjoyed this content. Stay tuned for future episodes. We are trying to make this weekly. Tuesdays we're dropping. If you want any more content from us, make sure to check out our website, dreadfuldialogue.com. Instagram is at Dreadful Dialogue Podcast. And then if you want some of my more personal happenings, you can check out at spookyvibes_Alyse. And again, thanks for being with us, Gray. And everybody out there listening, have a good one.
Have a good one.